Good morning, everybody, and welcome to what I think is the sixth session on management and leadership, with a particular emphasis on us as Christian leaders. I say those words very carefully because I can swallow the Christian. The leaders a bit, I'm not so sure about. Hence, I felt the need for these seminars. Today I'd like to talk about personal organization, self-organization. In the 70s, we would have called that time management, but we moved on a little bit since then. So we tend to call it personal organization. It is essentially about the effectiveness and the efficiency of your church, your ministry, your organization's most valuable resource. You're the most valuable resource. Now, whether you can use it effectively and efficiently remains to be seen. But that's what the subject is essentially about. Now, there are, as I think I said in a previous session, there are big cultural issues here. Leaders in the West tend to lead from the front, up front, in your face, telling you what it is, making it happen, setting the goals, measuring performance, and demanding nothing short of success. In the East, and in some third world countries, they have a different understanding. But whatever you look at, there's a few things we know about time. We know, for instance, it's a resource that we all share equally. It's just that some people, in their use of time, have greater effectiveness, a greater efficiency, and as a result, greater productivity. Now, I, for one, as an evangelist, as a bishop, want my productivity for the Lord to be at the highest level, not lukewarm, not just doing my bit on Sunday. No. I'm seeking 100% personal effectiveness and efficiency. Now, today, a few things I'm going to talk about. Some of you may find uncomfortable. Well, I'm sorry about that, but I'm going to just speak truthfully about how I make it work for me. There are three critical things that I think about when I think about my personal effectiveness. The most important thing for me is my diary. My diary. Because I write in it all the meetings I have, calls I've got to make on certain days, jobs that I've got to do that take up chunks of time, so I allocate 3 days to do it. In my own diary, because I run 5 profiles, I have a different profile that I work in every day. And my diary reminds me which profile I'm in. My team tease me about not knowing who I am today. Diaries are very important. You don't have to go out and spend a lot of money on them. You can get them free. You can download them. I use an electronic diary. And it's very helpful because you can put in reminders, you can put in repetition of particular events. Using a diary is a very critical tool. Most diaries come with a to-do list. And a to-do list is, as it suggests, just a list of things they've got to do. Now, most people who are ineffective have it in here. I don't. I have mine here. I have mine on a piece of paper because my memory isn't as good as it should be, and I can forget things. So my to-do list is written down. Again, actually, it's written down electronically. It's the last thing I do at night time, before I switch my computer off. I think about tomorrow, and I think about the things I've got to do. And I think about them in terms of putting them on the list, so that when I press the app, they come up and they tell me and remind me. Now, most of them I can probably remember, but there's always one or two that I forget. Now, even when I've done that, and I'm sitting and I'm relaxing, I'm having my dinner, maybe I'm watching a bit of TV, I have a piece of paper and a pad, because things will come to my mind that I need to do, that I didn't get onto my to-do list, and I'll add them on and deal with them in the morning. You see, to-do lists can be the daily things I do. There are weekly things I do, monthly, quarterly, annually. They can all be scheduled in. And that makes for much greater productivity, rather than just remembering on the day that it's the end of the year and I need to do my accounts. My daily to-do list is relatively straightforward. It's probably not dissimilar to your own. I tend to start the day because I like to evangelize after prayer in the morning. So I tend to post first prayers, scriptures, maybe a preach. I tend to like to get that out there at the beginning of my day, which is quite early in the morning, 7 o'clock here in the UK. But after I've done that, I have a set sequence. I deal with messages. The reason I deal with them first is I may raise questions that people may want to answer. So I need to be able to come back to them. So I do messages. I deal with emails. And then I look at any notifications I need to deal with. Now that's a set pattern for me every day. As I say, after I've done the emails and notifications, I go back to the messages, because if I've sent a message to somebody 45 minutes ago, they probably replied, and I may have to respond to that. It's all about getting efficient in how we do these things. Now, some tasks I do weekly. I do the accounts for the charity weekly. And incidentally, at the end of the month, when all the figures are in, I do the monthly. And when they're completed, I hand them over to our trustee, who submits them to the government. So there are monthly things that can be scheduled in. Things like audits. Because we run an organization based on plan, control, direct, and organize, things like audits need to be put into the diary. But if I'm going to do it quarterly, it's no good waiting till the end of March and asking my people to let me have their figures so I can compare them to where we were before. No, I've got to give them a couple of weeks' notice. So in my diary, I put a note 2 weeks before to remind people that in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to need their figures. because I don't want to be sitting around on the end of March waiting for stuff to come in and wasting my time, just sitting there wasting, because I will allocate time on the 31st of the month, if there's 31 days in it, or the 30th. I will allocate a chunk of time to do that analysis. And indeed, I will allocate probably time the following day to write up my report on that analysis. That could all be planned in and scheduled. Saves a lot of stress. Now, in the to-do list, we talked last week about the importance of the issues of urgency and importance of a task. And we looked at some things are urgent. They have to be dealt with now. Not in 10 minutes' time, not tomorrow, but now. They're urgent. Now, these things may not necessarily be important, but it's their urgency that drives us to take action now. Because if we don't take action now, we're going to miss something. Now, the other side of the coin, the important things, well, they are, as they say, important. You see, it's important to me to write, let's say, a policy on gifting so people understand how we gift as a charity. It's not urgent. I don't have to do it now or in the next 10 minutes or the next hour, but I have to do it because it's important that people understand these things. Because they don't understand these things, they waste my time by asking me all sorts of questions. So, recognizing whether something's urgent and important is really a key part of our judgment as managers, as leaders. Now, we need to recognize that certain tasks that we need to do require certain amounts of time. We have to estimate this. If I'm writing a policy, I don't block in my diary 20 minutes to do it because I know it's going to take me an hour to 2 hours. I always work on the outside. I like to beat my targets, so I will tend to give myself 2 hours and come in at 1 hour 20 minutes to do it. Now, that's great, because if I do that, I've got 40 minutes spare. And I can think about what I'm going to use that 40 minutes for. It's not for me to stop and have another cup of coffee. It's for me to use productively if I'm going to be effective and efficient as a leader. The big issue with personal organisation, the really big issue, is dealing with distractions or interruptions. Well, I've got to tell you, over many years in leadership roles in many organisations, you've got to get tough on this one. You cannot be woolly about this if you want to be productive. If you don't want to be productive, that's fine. If you want to just flop around, that's good. Let everybody interrupt you. But if you want to be productive, you got to get tough and get control. So how do you do that? Well, let me tell you how I do it. I don't take telephone calls at all from people in the week. At all. I don't care who they are. I don't take them. Because if I did, my phone rings constantly. I would never get anything done. So what I do, and this is a cute psychological tip, is I tell people when I'm available to take calls. Because by inference, what I'm actually saying is, and I'm not available on these times. So I take a positive view. So I say to people, I'm always available on this thing here. Any Wednesday. A number is well known. And I will take any calls on Wednesday. Now, from my diary perspective, I keep Wednesdays clear. I don't schedule anything else to do on Wednesdays. Because I know, usually, before I start work at 7 in the morning, people are starting to phone me. And when I finish at 7 o'clock at night, people are still trying to phone me. Last week, I was actually travelling on the Wednesday. And yet I received 47 calls in the first 6 hours. And some of these calls take 2 minutes. Some of these calls take 20 minutes. Some of them are counts. But that's the day I'm available. And having said that, I have to stick to that. I need some self-control, one of the fruits of the Spirit, to say that's the way that I do it. The telephone is the biggest scourge of modern humanity. We let total strangers interrupt our lives as soon as we hear the bell ring. We feel compelled to answer them. Well, it's nonsense. It's nonsense, quite frankly. There are rarely those things that are so urgent that I have to answer the telephone to. Now, actually, I misled you. I do take calls on other days. But I tell you this, it's a handful of people who I will take them from. Mostly my leadership team. I don't care what day it is. Even a Sunday, which I don't work on Sundays. I keep it holy. But even on a Sunday, I will take a call from somebody from the leadership team. Because they know how I work. And if it's not important to them, they wouldn't necessarily disturb me. So if they're calling me, I know it's important. And I need to pay attention to it. And I'm quite happy to do that. You see, we get interruptions in all sorts of ways. I was halfway through doing a preach this morning and the doorbell rang. And I knew it was somebody waiting to deliver something to me. What do? You ignore it? Refuse to take the parcel that I've been waiting a week for? No. I had to make a quick decision, stop the video, go and deal with it. We get interruptions. Some we can deal with, some we can't. The way I manage within Christian Warriors is I use gatekeepers. That's an expression that says I have people who I refer people onto rather than deal with me. Probably because they're probably better at it. They know about it. These are people I know and trust. So, delegations, pretty important part of self-organization. I got to know what I'm good at and what I make a special contribution at. And I've got to know the people that I lead, what they're good at, what their special contributions are. And I don't need to be concerned too much about delegating. You know, one of the biggest time wasters I find in organizations is meetings. Meetings. Why? Because they're chaotic. You give them 5 minutes notice. You don't even know what you're going to be meeting for. You don't know who's going to be there. You don't know what the purpose of the meeting is. And it's a nightmare. You get out of things what you put into things. So now when we try and have proper formalized meetings, and I'm not talking about the 10-minute jam chats I have with Margaret, my deputy, most days. That's not a formal meeting. But if I'm meeting with the board or with other leaders, then I try and give them notice of that meeting. I try and find a time that suits all of us in our different time zones across the world. I try and make sure that they have an agenda so they know the purpose of the meeting, why they're coming there. And if I need them to make a contribution, I will make that very clear on the agenda. Our agendas always have two specific, excuse me a moment, I'm just observing my dog who seems to have taken a liking to one of my pencils on my coffee table. Amazing what a little smack on the backside will do. That's a management technique, isn't it? Not literally, but the technique is negative reinforcement. Let's fix this problem. Meetings are very important, but they can be such a time waster. Somebody should keep a record of the meeting, and at the subsequent meeting that you're going to have, you should go over that record of what was agreed, so you've got something to actually look at to see whether it has happened. You know, all agendas should always have a space for any other business, to allow anybody who comes to that meeting to put on the table something that's concerning them. You know, the person writing up the notes to the meeting, and this may just seem like bureaucracy to you, but this is about efficiency. They should know who was present and who wasn't present, and who sent their apologies and who didn't. Because this, for me, is about common courtesy. I've talked about distractions. I talked about really 101 ways we can get distracted, like just now, me being distracted because my dog decided he wanted to get something off the table. Was that urgent and important? It surely wasn't important, but it was urgent. So I made a decision to do something about it. Now, distractions. In order to be effective in managing your time, the starting point is really to keep a log, a diary. Just do it for a week. Note down what you're doing at what times. And then go back over it and look at it and ask yourself, did that help or hinder me towards my objective? For me, it's simple. Did that help or hinder me towards our vision? Is that helping me make disciples of all the world? You can't begin to change things until you've got good data, as we'll look at when we come to decision making. The quality of what you do will be based on the quality of the information you've got. It's no good you listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, well, I'll do a few of these things that might help. Your starting point is to understand where you are now. Look at it. Look at it hard. You know, last week I was talking in the mental health Facebook group that we run, Christians and Mental Health, about chronic stress. A lot of pastors experience chronic stress. It's mostly caused by overload. But they're not overloaded because they've got lots of things to do. They're overloaded because they're inefficient and ineffective in how they manage themselves, the most valuable resource they have in their church. That may go against their humility and their modesty, but that happens to be a fact. Self-organization. You know, when I was preaching on self-control the other day, I found myself talking about self-organization. It's about order and diligence. It's about effectiveness and efficiency. It's not complicated. It does require some thought, and it does require you to put in place some systems and processes that will make your life a lot easier. I mean, classic example. I switch on my messages every day, and I have so many people waiting to friend me. I have a standard response, which I cut and paste. I mean, I can't afford to write an individual when they pop up with the hi, praise the Lord. I can't afford to write something 100 times in a morning to those sorts of messages. I have a standard response. Simple system. I have simple filing systems, a box with telephones and passwords in. I keep it simple. But I have it. And that's the key. You want to be productive. You want to be effective and efficient. Or do you want to be laissez-faire? And just, well, whatever will be, will be. Whatever the Lord deems will happen, will happen. Well, I'm telling you, brother, it ain't like that. God expects us to do our part. We can't just leave it to him and say, well, I'll pray that tomorrow will be okay. It won't be okay unless I've also done some things myself to make sure it is. Shouldn't really get me talking about self-organization and self-discipline, because that's a big one for me. If any of you need any help, I want to talk about it, please, I'm here, I'm available. Yeah, you can call me on Wednesday, or you can message me, or email me, because I do respond to my emails. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. I can't, for the life of me now, recall what next week's session is about. But I got a feeling we got to be moving into communications. Communications is what makes all the leadership and management work. We often think because we're good preachers, we're good communicators. Wrong! It doesn't work like that. And I'll give you the scientific evidence to prove it when we get to talk about it. God bless you all. Thanks for your time. I've enjoyed talking to you.